I married the man everyone feared because the men I trusted had already sold me. That was the truth I could not say out loud while I stood in front of the bridal mirror on the 42nd floor of a New York hotel, wearing a white dress chosen by women who never asked whether I wanted to be beautiful for a man I did not love. My name was Emma Caldwell, and at 25 years old, I had learned that family could turn love into a leash if they tied it with the right words. Duty. Sacrifice. Survival. My hands were cold around the letter my Uncle Martin had slid beneath my door that morning. If you refuse him, your mother loses the house by Friday. Claire's tuition fund disappears by midnight. Smile, Emma. This is how you save them. I read it so many times the ink seemed to bruise my eyes. Outside the suite, the wedding planner spoke into a headset. Florists carried white orchids down the hallway. Somewhere below us, in a ballroom filled with candlelight and private security, Victor Kane waited to marry me. Victor Kane. The ruthless mafia boss with a face sharp enough for magazine covers and a name people lowered when they said it. The man whose black cars moved through Manhattan like whether everyone pretended not to notice. The man my uncle claimed held my family's debt in one hand and our future in the other. I pressed my palm against the mirror and looked at the bride staring back. Pale skin. Blonde hair pinned low. Ivory satin. A diamond necklace my mother had fastened with shaking fingers before leaving the room because she could not bear to watch her daughter become payment. I do not want him, I whispered to my reflection. My voice sounded smaller than the room. I only want my family to survive. The door opened behind me. I turned too fast, the letter crumpling in my fist. Victor Kane stood in the doorway in a black suit, no flower pinned to his lapel, no smile arranged for photographs. He was tall, white-skinned, dark-haired, with gray eyes that made the room feel suddenly honest and unsafe at the same time. I expected ownership. I expected satisfaction. I expected a monster arriving to inspect what had been delivered to him. Instead, he stepped inside alone and closed the door gently behind him. You should lock bridal suites, he said. Dangerous men walk in. My throat tightened. Are you warning me about yourself? Among others. He crossed the room, not toward me, but toward the small table beside the window. He placed a new phone on it, still sealed in its box, along with a white card. Call anyone you trust before you walk down that aisle. I stared at the phone. Is this a test? No, then what is it? A door. The word landed between us harder than any threat. I looked at him, then at the letter in my hand. My uncle said you would ruin us if I refused. Victor's gaze moved to the paper, but he did not reach for it. Martin Caldwell says many things when he needs a woman frightened enough to obey. The room tilted. You know what he sent me? I know he sent something. I know your mother's house and your sister's tuition were mentioned because cowards always hide behind the people you love. My breath caught. Then this is true. You are using my family to make me marry you. His face did not change, but the air did. No, Emma. Someone is using my name to make you marry me. I hated the way hope moved through me then, thin and dangerous. Why would you agree to it? Victor stepped back from the table, leaving the phone where I could choose it. Because if you marry the man Martin chose before me, the Caldwell Trust transfers tonight to a shell company controlled by men who will empty it before sunrise. What man? Silas Ward's nephew. I knew the name only from whispers. Ward. A rival family. My uncle had said Victor was the threat. Victor's voice lowered. Marrying me freezes the transaction for 72 hours. It does not save you. It buys you time. I laughed once, sharp and broken. So I am supposed to thank you for making yourself the better cage? His eyes held mine. No. You are supposed to hate me if that keeps you standing. I stepped closer, anger finally warmer than fear. I do not want you. Good. The answer stunned me silent. Victor Kane looked at me like the truth had not offended him at all. Wanting should never begin with fear. Victor's answer did not soften the room. It sharpened it. Wanting should never begin with fear. I wanted to throw the words back at him because men like Victor Kane were not supposed to speak like that. They were supposed to command, own, take up space until everyone else forgot they had the right to breathe. Instead, he stood 6 feet from me, the new phone untouched on the table between us, and waited as if my choice mattered even inside a wedding built to erase it. I looked down at the crumpled letter from my uncle. Friday, midnight. Smile, Emma. My mother's house. Claire's tuition. Every threat was written in the language of love, which made it harder to hate. If I call my mother, she will tell me to do it, I said. She thinks losing me for one marriage is better than losing everything. Victor's joy tightened. Your mother is frightened. That does not make her cruel. And my uncle? Your uncle is comfortable with your fear. That is worse. I looked at the phone again. Who would I call? Someone who is not paid by Martin. Someone who knows the Caldwell trust. Someone who would rather be inconvenient than polite. One name rose in me like a match struck in a dark room. Nora Bell, my father's old attorney, the woman my uncle had called dramatic, bitter, and impossible after she questioned the engagement documents. I had stopped answering her emails because Martin said she wanted fees we could not afford. Suddenly, that sounded less like warning and more like strategy. I opened the phone box with shaking hands. Victor turned his back before I entered the number, giving me privacy I had not asked for and did not know how to trust. Nora answered on the fifth ring, breathless, as if she had been waiting beside the phone for months. Emma? My knees almost gave. Nora, it is me. Where are you? At the hotel. Before the wedding. A sharp silence. Then, do not sign anything Martin gives you. My eyes closed. He said the debt is to Victor Kane. Victor stood by the window, his reflection dark against the skyline. Nora exhaled hard. The debt is not real. The trust transfer is. Your uncle has been trying to trigger a marital control clause your father never approved. If you marry the Ward side, your mother's holdings move tonight. My heart pounded. And if I marry Victor? It freezes the transfer because Kane's legal team filed an objection this morning. I turned toward Victor. He did not look back. You knew. I suspected. Now I know. Nora's voice lowered. Emma, listen to me. If you go through with this, do it only under conditions. Separate counsel. Separate residence if you want it. Written protection for your mother and Claire. And no private signing after the ceremony. I repeated her words silently, holding them like stones in my pocket. Conditions. Protection. No private signing. When the call ended, the ballroom music began below us, muffled by 42 floors of glass and expensive carpet. Time was moving whether I was ready or not. Victor finally turned. What did she say? That you are not the only monster in the room. I never claimed to be. And that if I do this, I need conditions. Name them. I stared at him. You agree before hearing them? I agree that you get to have them. I hated that he made hatred difficult. A separate room. Done. My own phone, my own lawyer, and no papers from your family without Nora reading them first. Done. My mother keeps her house. Claire keeps her tuition fund. In writing. Done. No one touches their accounts. No one threatens them. No one uses them to control me. His eyes held mine. Done. I swallowed. The last condition was the hardest because it was not legal. It was human. And you do not pretend this is love. The room went quiet. Victor looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable, his power held so still it almost looked like restraint. Emma, he said, if love ever enters this marriage, it will not be because I forced a name on it. My throat burned. Outside the door, someone knocked. 5 minutes. The wedding planner sounded nervous. Maybe everyone sounded nervous near a woman deciding how much of herself could survive a bargain. I looked at the mirror one last time. The bride staring back still looked pale. Still trapped. But her eyes were different now. Not free. Not yet. Aware. Victor opened the door, then stepped aside so I could walk out first. That mattered more than I wanted it to. In the hallway, cameras waited, family waited, lies waited in tailored suits. I lifted my chin and walked toward the elevator beside the man I did not want, carrying conditions like hidden knives made of paper. The elevator ride down to the ballroom felt like descending into someone else's decision. Victor stood beside me, not touching me, not speaking, his reflection dark and still in the polished gold doors. I could see myself beside him in fragments. White dress. Pale face. Diamond necklace. A bride made of conditions and fear. On the 27th floor, the elevator stopped, and my Uncle Martin stepped in with two men I did not recognize. He smiled when he saw us, the kind of smile that had raised me after my father died and trained me to mistake control for care. "Emma," he said warmly, "there you are. Everyone is waiting." His eyes flicked to Victor, then to the phone in my hand. The smile thinned. Where did that come from? I held it tighter. A door. Victor's mouth did not move, but I felt his attention sharpen beside me. Martin's gaze hardened for half a second before warmth returned like a curtain dropping. "Sweetheart, today is stressful. Let us not make it harder with confusion." I looked at him, really looked, and wondered how many years I had called his instructions love because they were spoken softly. "Nora Bell is reviewing every document before I sign anything." The elevator went quiet. One of the men beside Martin shifted his weight. Martin laughed gently. "Nora is not family. That is why I trust her today." The words left my mouth before fear could polish them. Victor looked straight ahead, but the air around him changed. Not interfering, not saving, only bearing witness. Martin stepped closer. "You do not understand the size of what you're risking." "I understand enough. Your mother's house will be protected in writing. Claire's tuition. Protected in writing. By him." Martin glanced at Victor with open distaste. "You are trusting a cane?" Victor finally turned his head. His voice was quiet enough to make the elevator feel smaller. "She is trusting terms. Not me." That sentence stopped Martin more effectively than anger would have. The doors opened onto the ballroom level, releasing us into candlelight, orchids, and the low murmur of guests who had paid fortunes to pretend this wedding was romance. My mother stood near the entrance in a silver dress, one hand pressed to her chest. Claire, my 19-year-old sister, stood beside her, eyes red, fingers twisting the strap of her purse. When she saw me, she started forward, but Martin caught her wrist. Not hard. Not dramatic. Just enough to remind her who still thought he owned the room. I saw it. Victor saw it too. His voice cut through the hallway like a blade made of ice. "Release her." Martin froze. Claire pulled her hand free and came to me. She smelled like vanilla perfume and fear. "Emma," she whispered, "please tell me this is not because of us." I wanted to lie. Sisters like kindly when the truth is too heavy. But I was tired of kindness being used as a curtain. "It is because of you," I said, touching her cheek. "But not in the way he told you." Her eyes moved to Martin. My mother stepped closer, trembling. "What does that mean?" The wedding planner appeared before I could answer, pale and panicked. "We need to begin." Of course we did. Lies hate delays. They give truth too much time to breathe. Victor looked at me. "You can still stop." Martin made a sharp sound. "Do not be ridiculous." I looked at the ballroom doors, then at my mother, then at Claire. If I stopped now, Martin would find another way before midnight. If I walked in, I bought 72 hours and a legal freeze. Not freedom. Time. Sometimes time is the first shape freedom takes. "No," I said. "We begin." The music changed. The doors opened. Hundreds of faces turned toward me, hungry for beauty, blind to bargaining. I walked down the aisle alone because I had refused to let Martin give me away like a document with perfume. Victor waited at the end in black, still as judgment, dangerous enough to make the room quiet. When I reached him, he did not take my hand. He held his palm open and waited. I placed my fingers there because I chose the gesture, not because the room expected it. The officiant spoke about union, partnership, devotion. Words too soft for what stood between us. When he asked if I took Victor Kane as my husband, I looked at the man everyone feared and thought of the phone, the conditions, the door. "I do," I said, not as surrender, but as a countdown. Victor's answer came low and steady. "I do." The room applauded. Martin smiled. But Victor leaned close enough for only me to hear and said, 72 hours starts now." The applause sounded like rain against glass, pretty from a distance and cold when it touched you. I stood beside Victor Kane beneath a ceiling of white orchids while guests rose to their feet, smiling at a marriage they thought they understood. My Uncle Martin clapped first. Of course he did. Men like him always applauded after arranging the stage. My mother cried quietly in the front row, one hand around Claire's. I could not tell if her tears were grief, relief, or the pain of watching survival walk down the aisle in satin. Victor released my hand the second the officiant turned us toward the room. Not dramatically. Not with disgust. Simply because the ceremony had ended, and he seemed to understand that a vow spoken under pressure did not give him the right to hold what I had not offered. That small freedom unsettled me more than his name. At the reception, waiters moved through the ballroom with champagne and silver trays no one truly tasted. Cameras flashed. Guests offered congratulations with careful eyes. Some looked at me like I had become dangerous by marriage. Others looked at me like I had been bought. I wondered which was easier to survive. Martin found me near the ice sculpture shaped like two swans and lowered his voice into the kind of tenderness that used to make me obey. You did well, sweetheart. My skin went cold. Do not call obedience well. His smile stayed. You are emotional. I am informed. That word made his eyes harden. Before he could answer, Victor appeared at my side, close enough to witness, not close enough to claim. Martin. My uncle turned, relief and irritation mixing across his face. Victor. Fine ceremony. It was efficient. The answer landed flat. Martin laughed like it was a joke. There are documents to sign before the evening ends. Minor formalities. For the protection terms. I looked at Victor. He looked at me, not Martin. Nora reviews everything. Martin's jaw tightened. Nora Bell is not in attendance. She is downstairs, Victor said. In conference room 3. My breath caught. You brought her here? You named her. He said it as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. Martin's smile vanished for half a second. This is family business. Victor's gaze did not move. Then you should not have invited shell companies. The words were quiet, but they changed the air around us. Martin stepped back slightly. You are making accusations at your own wedding? No, Victor said. I am making records. He lifted one hand, and a man in a dark suit approached with a slim folder. Not threatening. Administrative. Somehow worse for Martin. Every document offered tonight is copied, time-stamped, and reviewed by separate counsel. My uncle looked at me then, and the softness was gone. Under it lives something older and uglier. Emma, do you understand what he is doing? He is isolating you. I almost laughed. You handed me to him, and now you are worried about isolation? His face flushed. I protected this family after your father died. You managed this family. Because someone had to. And now someone else is reading the papers. Martin leaned closer, voice low enough to avoid the cameras. Your mother cannot handle a scandal. Claire cannot handle losing school. Do not let this man make you reckless. The old fear rose fast. My mother's house. Claire's tuition. Friday. Midnight. Victor did not interrupt it. He let me feel the fear and decide whether it still owned me. I looked across the room. Claire was watching, eyes wide, no longer held by Martin's hand. My mother sat beside her, pale, but awake to something she had not wanted to see. I turned back to my uncle. If the truth ruins the plan, then the plan was not protection. Martin's mouth opened, but the ballroom lights dimmed for the first dance. A soft piano melody began, and guests turned toward us expectantly. The bride and groom. The performance had another scene waiting. Victor looked at me. You can refuse. Hundreds of eyes waited. Martin waited. My mother waited. The city waited behind glass and money and rumor. I placed my hand in Victor's, not because he owned the moment, but because refusing would make Martin look reasonable and me look afraid. One dance, I said. With space. Victor's fingers closed lightly around mine. With space. We stepped onto the floor. He kept a careful distance, one hand at my shoulder blade without pressure, his body never crowding mine. The music moved around us like a lie trying to become beautiful. Why are you really doing this? I asked. Freezing the trust does not explain marrying me yourself. Victor's eyes lowered to mine. Because Silas Ward needed you married into his line before midnight. Martin needed the transfer hidden. I needed the contract stopped by someone with enough power to challenge both. You needed me. Yes. The honesty stung. So I am useful to you too. For 72 hours, he said. After that, I intend to make sure you are free to become inconvenient to everyone. I hated that my chest softened. Hated it. The dance ended. Applause rose again, polite and hollow. Victor released me immediately and stepped back. Across the ballroom, Martin was on his phone, speaking too quickly. Then I saw the name glowing on his screen before he turned away. Silas Ward. Silas Ward's name on my uncle's phone made the ballroom shrink around me. It was only 2 words glowing on a screen, but they carried the weight of every lie I had been fed that morning. Victor saw it too. I knew because his expression did not change, and by then I had started to understand that his stillness was never emptiness. It was calculation locked behind bone. Martin turned away quickly, moving toward the side corridor with his phone pressed to his ear. Go after him, I whispered. Victor's eyes stayed on me. Do you want me to? The question irritated me because the answer should have been obvious, and then it terrified me because he was still making me choose even when the room was burning quietly. Yes. Victor inclined his head once and walked toward the corridor, not fast, not dramatic, but with enough purpose that people moved without knowing why. I followed before anyone could decide whether a bride was supposed to stay near the cake. The hallway outside the ballroom was dimmer, lined with smoked mirrors and closed conference room doors. Martin's voice came from around the corner, low and sharp. She is Nora Bell here. Kane knew more than you said he did. A pause. No, the transfer has not cleared. The marriage froze it. My pulse thudded in my throat. Victor stopped beside me, listening without touching me, his shoulder a wall of black suit and restraint. Martin continued, then find another trigger. I do not care how. Claire's tuition, the mother's house, use whatever still moves her. My breath left me. There it was. Not misunderstanding. Not protection. Not family doing ugly things for love. A lever. That was all we were to him. My mother's house. Claire's future. My fear. Victor looked at me, and I hated that his eyes were not surprised. Record, he mouthed. I lifted the phone he had given me and pressed the red button. My hand shook, but the screen stayed steady enough. Martin's voice sharpened again. Emma is emotional, but she obeys when the family is at risk. Something inside me went very calm. Not healed. Not brave. Calm in the way a glass becomes still right before it cracks. Victor stepped around the corner first. Does she? Martin spun so fast he almost dropped the phone. This is a private call. Not anymore, I said, stepping into view with the phone raised. My uncle's face changed as he saw the recording light. For the first time in my life, Martin Caldwell looked at me without the mask of care. Turn that off. No, the word was small and complete. Victor stood beside me silent. Martin looked at him. You put her up to this. She pressed the button herself. You think this makes you safe, Emma? Martin's voice lowered, losing polish. You think he will protect you when you are no longer useful? My fingers tightened around the phone. I think you just explained exactly how you see me. The side door opened behind us and Nora Bell stepped into the hall in a navy suit, silver hair pinned back, glasses low on her nose. Good, she said, looking at my phone. Keep recording. I almost laughed from shock. Nora walked to my side and held out her hand, not for the phone, but for the letter Martin had written me that morning. I gave it to her. She read it once, her mouth tightening with every line. Coercive language. Threats involving third-party financial harm. Useful. Martin scoffed. This is absurd. Nora looked over her glasses. It usually feels that way when women start keeping copies. Victor's mouth moved slightly, almost a smile, but he buried it before it became disrespectful to the moment. Nora turned to me. Emma, your mother and sister are in conference room 3. They're safe. Claire's tuition fund was locked by emergency notice 10 minutes ago. Your mother's deed is flagged. No transfer can process without court review. My knees nearly softened. You did that already? Victor's objection opened the window. Your call gave me authority. Your uncle's impatience gave me evidence. Martin stepped toward her. You have no right. Victor moved 1 inch. Only one. Martin stopped. No violence. No touch. Just the memory of who Victor Kane was when he did not need to prove it. Nora lifted the folder in her hand. Mr. Caldwell, if you have additional documents for the bride, you may send them through counsel. If you have additional threats, please speak clearly toward the phone. For a second, the hallway belonged entirely to her. Not Victor. Not Martin. Nora, with her paper and her calm voice and her refusal to be impressed by powerful men. I looked at Victor then and saw something in his face that surprised me. Approval. Not of control. Of competence. He respected the woman protecting me. That mattered. Martin's phone buzzed again. Silas Ward's name flashed before he silenced it. Nora saw it. Victor saw it. I saw it. The web had a shape now. My uncle, Silas Ward, the false debt, the trust transfer, the marriage meant to unlock me. Victor turned to me. The ballroom or the conference room? I understood the question. Public exposure or private strategy. Rage wanted the ballroom. Fear wanted the conference room. My mother and Claire waited behind one door. Hundreds of witnesses waited behind another. I breathed in slowly. Conference room first, I said. I am done letting men use my family while I am not in the room. Victor stepped aside so I could lead. As I walked past him, my wedding dress brushed his black suit, white against darkness for one accidental second. He did not reach for me. He only said quietly, "Good choice, Mrs. Kane." I stopped and looked back. His eyes flickered, realizing the mistake before I corrected it. "Emma," he said. "Good choice, Emma." And I kept walking, because for the first time all day, my name sounded bigger than the marriage. Conference room 3 smelled like lemon polish, fresh coffee, and fear trying to behave. My mother sat at the long glass table with Claire beside her, both of them still dressed for a wedding that had become something closer to a hearing. My mother's silver dress shimmered beneath the fluorescent lights. Claire's mascara had smudged at the corners, and when she saw me, she stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "Emma." I crossed the room and took her hands. They were cold. "Your tuition is locked," I said before she could ask. "No one can touch it tonight." Her face crumpled. "I thought you married him because of me." The sentence broke something in my mother. She covered her mouth with one hand and turned away, but I had no more patience for grief that hid from truth. "Mom," I said softly. "Look at me." She did. Her eyes were red, frightened, and full of the kind of guilt that can make love dangerous if it refuses to speak. "Did you know Martin was using the house to force me?" Her lips trembled. "I knew we were in trouble. That was not my question." Silence filled the room. Nora stood near the door, tablet in hand. Victor remained outside in the hallway for a moment, as if giving my family the dignity of not being watched by the man they had been taught to fear. That choice made my throat tighten. My mother looked down at her hands. "Martin said if you married Victor, the Kane debt would be settled and Claire would stay in school. He said you were strong enough to survive an unhappy marriage." Claire made a small sound. I let go of her hands and stepped back because if I stayed too close, I might forgive too quickly just to stop her pain. "Strong enough," I repeated. "That is what people say when they need permission to hurt you." My mother flinched. Nora's eyes softened, but she did not interrupt. The door opened behind us and Victor stepped in only after I turned toward him. "Your uncle is being escorted to another conference room," he said. "With counsel present." My mother stiffened. "Escorted. He is not being harmed," Victor said. His voice stayed even. "He is being documented." Claire stared at him like she had expected horns and found a man with precise manners instead. "Are you really the reason the transfer stopped?" she asked. Victor looked at me before answering, and I understood he was asking whether I wanted him to speak. I nodded once. "My legal team filed an objection this morning," he said. "Emma's call to Ms. Bell gave her attorney authority to freeze the Caldwell assets under independent review." "Why?" my mother whispered. "If the debt is not real, why marry her at all?" The question I had not stopped asking. Victor placed a folder on the table and slid it toward Nora, not me, not my mother. Because Silas Ward and Martin Caldwell needed Emma married into the Ward network by midnight. The marital control clause would trigger a trust transfer to a shell company. My name was used as the threat because fear of me travels faster than facts. Nora opened the folder. And by marrying Victor, the ward transfer became blocked by competing spousal objection and contested authority. Claire blinked. That sounds insane. Nora nodded. Most financial traps sound insane once someone explains them without the pretty paper. My mother looked at Victor. So you married my daughter to protect her? He did not take the easy answer. No. I married her to stop a transaction that would have harmed her family and strengthened my enemy. Protecting her became the only decent way to survive the method. The honesty was not pretty. It did not make him a savior. It made him complicated enough to be real. My mother reached for me, then stopped before touching my arm. Emma, I am sorry. 2 words. Too small. Too late. Still necessary. I looked at her hand hovering in the space between us, the hand that had fastened my necklace, the hand that had trembled and let me walk toward a man I did not want because fear had convinced her sacrifice was love when someone else was doing the bleeding. I know, I said. Not forgiveness. Not yet. A beginning. Claire wiped her cheeks and looked at Victor. Do you have a sister? He seemed surprised by the question. No, then you should know something. If you make my sister cry for any reason that is not healing, I will become very difficult. For the first time all day, Victor Kane almost smiled. I believe you. Nora cleared her throat, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Then she removed a small velvet pouch from her bag and set it in front of me. Your mother gave this to me before the ceremony. She said your father wanted you to have it when you were ready. My mother's face went pale. I forgot. No, Nora said gently. You were scared. I opened the pouch. Inside lay my mother's old gold necklace, the one she had worn every anniversary after my father died. The pendant was heart-shaped, simple, worn smooth at the edges. As I lifted it, something clicked. A tiny seam opened along the side. Victor's attention sharpened. Inside the pendant was a folded strip of paper, thinner than a ribbon, covered in my father's handwriting. Trust the man who gives you a door, not the one who offers a cage. Beneath it were 4 numbers and the name of a private bank. I looked up slowly. 72 hours had suddenly become much shorter. The strip of paper inside my mother's necklace was so thin it should not have been able to carry the weight of the room, yet every person went still when I read my father's words aloud. Trust the man who gives you a door, not the one who offers a cage. My mother began to cry quietly, not the beautiful kind of crying people forgive in ballrooms, but the broken kind that comes when grief realizes it left one last message unread. Claire leaned over my shoulder and stared at the 4 numbers written beneath the sentence. Dad hid a bank code in Mom's necklace? Your father distrusted obvious places, Nora said. And obvious people. Victor stood near the wall, silent, his dark suit cutting a clean line against the pale conference room. I expected him to ask for the note. He did not. He looked at me instead. Do you want to go to the bank tonight? It was past 9. Outside, the wedding reception was still pretending to exist 3 doors away. Music drifted through the wall, soft and ridiculous, as if the hotel had not become a battlefield made of documents. Can we? I asked Nora. Private banks answer after hours when the right emergency language is used. She tapped her tablet. And your father's name still carries weight in that institution. My mother looked ashamed. He tried to tell me there were things I did not know. I told him secrets were what destroyed families. No, I said, folding the note carefully. Lies destroy families. Secrets just wait. Victor's eyes moved to mine, and for one dangerous second, the room seemed to narrow to the space between what I said and what he understood. Then Nora closed her folder with a crisp snap. We move now. The hotel service elevator took us down to the private garage, me in my wedding dress, Nora with her tablet, Victor beside us, and 2 of his people several steps behind with their hands visible and their voices silent. My mother and Claire stayed upstairs under Nora's protection because I asked them to. That mattered. I asked. No one decided for me. In the garage, Victor opened the rear door of a black car, then stepped back. Nora rides with you. I will take the front. I almost smiled despite myself. You are learning. Slowly. Do not sound proud. I am not. I am documenting progress. The drive to the bank took 12 minutes through Manhattan streets washed in yellow taxi light and late summer humidity. The city outside looked alive and careless, people laughing outside restaurants, couples crossing streets, a woman walking a dog in a red sweater. I watched them and wondered how many lives looked normal from the curb while someone inside them was being quietly traded. Victor did not speak from the front seat. Nora made 3 calls, each colder and more precise than the last. By the time we arrived at the private bank near Bryant Park, a manager in a charcoal suit was waiting at the side entrance with 2 security officers and a face that wanted no part of whatever had followed us there. "Mrs. Kane," he said. I stopped walking. Victor did too. Nora looked over her glasses. The manager swallowed. "Miss Caldwell," he corrected quickly. "This way." We were taken to a downstairs viewing room with frosted glass walls and a polished steel table. The manager verified my identification, then my father's code, then the necklace note, then asked me to speak my full name into a recorder. "Emma Rose Caldwell," I said, steady enough to surprise myself. "Present voluntarily with independent counsel." The vault box arrived in a gray case. Inside were 3 folders, a flash drive, and a sealed envelope addressed to me in my father's handwriting. Nora touched nothing until I nodded. I opened the envelope first. "My daughter, if Martin has made you afraid, then he has finally become the kind of man I once trusted too much." The room blurred, but I kept reading. "The debt is false. The danger is real. Silas Ward and Martin plan to use marriage to trigger the Caldwell Trust, then blame the collapse on Victor Kane. Victor is not innocent in this city, but he is not the architect of this cage." I looked at Victor. His face had gone still in that way I was beginning to recognize as pain refusing to kneel. The final line of my father's letter waited at the bottom of the page. "If the man they call ruthless gives you a door, make him prove he knows how to leave it open." The letter did not absolve Victor Kane. That was the first thing I noticed. My father had not written him into the story as a savior, and somehow that made the truth easier to trust. Victor is not innocent in this city, but he is not the architect of this cage. The sentence sat between us on the steel table, clean and merciless. Victor read it once when I handed it to him, then placed it back in front of me without trying to explain the parts that made him look dark. "Your father was generous," he said. "No," I replied. "He was precise." His eyes lifted to mine. For 1 second, I saw the ruthless man everyone whispered about, not because he looked cruel, but because he looked like someone who had survived by cutting away every soft thing before it could be used against him. Then he nodded. "Yes, precise." Nora removed the first folder from the vault box and spread the documents across the table with gloved hands. Trust diagrams. Corporate names. Wire instructions. Draft marriage clauses. A proposed transfer labeled Caldwell Family Protection Vehicle. I laughed when I saw it, a small ugly sound. "They named the cage protection." "They often do," Nora said. She pointed to a page with Martin's initials beside Silas Ward's legal team. "This shows Martin agreed to move your mother's residence and Claire's tuition reserve into a controlled trust within 6 hours of your marriage to the Ward nominee." I looked at Victor. "And marrying you blocked it?" "Temporarily." "Because you objected?" "Because I filed a competing claim that any transfer involving my legal spouse required independent review." His jaw tightened. It was a technical move. Not a noble one. But it worked. For 72 hours. Nora plugged the flash drive into her encrypted laptop. A series of scan letters appeared, then recorded meeting notes, then a draft statement blaming Victor for coercing me into marriage and destabilizing the Caldwell Trust. I felt cold all over. "They were going to blame you." Victor looked at the screen. "Yes." "Then why did Martin tell me you were the danger?" "Because fear works better when it already has a face." The bank manager stood near the door pretending not to listen. Outside the frosted glass, Manhattan moved above us without knowing my life was being rebuilt beneath its sidewalks. Nora opened another file and went very still. "Emma." I leaned closer. It was a document dated 2 weeks earlier. My signature sat at the bottom. Not my real signature, but close enough to make my stomach turn. Consent to preliminary marital asset review. Consent to temporary education fund reassignment. Consent to residence collateralization. Consent. 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 A word copied until it became a lie with my handwriting. I did not sign that, I whispered. Victor's voice went quiet. I know. How? He reached into his jacket and placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a copy of the condition list I had given him before the wedding, written in my hand only hours ago, with Nora's digital timestamp attached. Because the first thing you demanded was independent review. A woman planning to sign away everything does not demand a witness. My throat tightened. I had thought the conditions were only paper knives. I had not known they would become proof of the woman I was before they forged a quieter version of me. Nora photographed the forged documents, sealed the originals, and sent a secure notice to 3 legal contacts while I stood there trying not to shake apart in a wedding dress under bank lights. Victor did not touch me. I noticed because some damaged part of me expected men to claim comfort as permission. He only stepped closer to the table and said, "Tell me what you want next." Not what we do. Not what I should do. What I wanted. I looked at the forged consent forms, then at my father's letter. I want my mother and Claire protected before Martin knows we found this. Nora nodded. Already in motion. I want the forged documents reported. Yes. And I want to decide whether this marriage continues after 72 hours without anyone calling gratitude love. Victor's face changed slightly at that. Not hurt. Acceptance with a bruise under it. Agreed. The bank manager's phone rang. He answered, listened, and looked toward Victor with alarm. "Mr. Kane, there are men upstairs asking for Miss Caldwell. They say they are with her family." Nora closed the laptop. Victor looked at me, not the door. "Do you want to leave through the private exit?" The old Emma would have chosen hiding. The old Emma had been trained to survive quietly. But the woman in my father's letter was beginning to stand. "No," I said, gathering the sealed envelope and lifting my chin. "I want to walk out the front with the documents in my hand." Victor's eyes held mine, and something like respect moved through the gray. "Then I will walk behind you." We left the vault room through the main corridor, not the private exit. The bank manager walked ahead with the stiff posture of a man praying his lobby would not become part of someone else's scandal. Nora carried the sealed evidence pouch under one arm, her phone recording openly in her other hand. I held my father's letter and the folder of forged consent forms against my chest. Victor walked behind me, exactly where he said he would, close enough for the room to feel his presence, far enough that no one could pretend he was moving my feet for me. The elevator rose slowly. I watched the numbers climb and felt each floor strip something from me. Fear. Shame. Obedience. The need to explain myself softly so people who hurt me would not feel accused. When the doors opened into the marble lobby, Silas Ward was waiting beside my Uncle Martin. I had never met him in person, but I knew him instantly. Some men entered rooms like guests. Silas looked like the room had been built to hold his patience. He was silver-haired, white-skinned, beautifully dressed, and cold in a way that made Victor's darkness seem honest. Martin stood beside him, face pale, phone clutched too tightly. "Emma," Martin said, relief forced into his voice. "Thank God. We were worried." I held up the folder. "You were early." His eyes flicked to the documents. Silas noticed. "Miss Caldwell," Silas said smoothly, "there has been a misunderstanding." Nora stepped beside me. "Good. Misunderstandings are easier to correct when everyone is being recorded." Silas's gaze moved to her phone, then to Victor behind me. "Kane. Still hiding behind brides." The lobby went silent. 2 security officers stood near the desk, uncertain but listening. Victor did not move forward. "Tonight, I am standing behind one because she asked me to." The answer moved through me in a way I did not want to name. Not comfort. Not exactly. Something steadier. Silas looked at me like I was a document he had expected to be signed already. "You are in the middle of business far older than you. Then it should have learned better manners by now." Nora's mouth twitched. Martin hissed my name under his breath, but I did not look at him. Silas smiled faintly. "Your father was brave too." It did not save him from trusting the wrong people. The words were gentle. The cruelty was not. Victor's stillness changed behind me, but he stayed where he was. My father's letter crinkled under my fingers. My father left better records than you did lies. Silas's smile vanished. Nora placed the sealed pouch on the lobby table and addressed the bank manager. For the record, these documents were retrieved from Mr. Caldwell's private vault box by Emma Rose Caldwell, present voluntarily with independent counsel. They include forged consent forms, proposed trust transfers, shell company routing, and written evidence connecting Martin Caldwell and Silas Ward to attempted asset diversion. The bank manager swallowed. Noted. Martin stepped toward me. Emma, stop this. Think of your mother. The old sentence. The old leash. But it no longer fit around my throat. I am thinking of her, I said. I am thinking of Claire. I am thinking of every night you made us believe fear was the rent we owed for your protection. Martin's face twisted. You ungrateful child. There it was. The truth under the uncle. Not sweetheart. Not family. Child. Ungrateful. Property that had learned grammar. Victor's voice came low from behind me. Careful. I turned my head slightly. No, he went silent at once. I looked back at Martin. Let him speak. Let everyone hear what care sounds like when it loses control. Martin looked around the lobby and realized too late that witnesses had become walls. Silas adjusted his cuff. This is emotional theater. No, Nora said. This is preliminary evidence. At that moment, the bank doors opened, and two investigators entered with a woman from the state attorney's office, whom Nora clearly expected. She greeted them by name and handed over a copy of the sealed inventory. Silas's calm thinned. Martin looked at Victor as if betrayal had come from the wrong direction. But Victor was looking only at me. Not proud like he had made me. Not possessive like he had won. Quiet, as if watching a locked door open from the inside. The woman from the state attorney's office asked, Miss Caldwell, do you confirm you wish to submit these documents for review? I stepped forward before anyone else could answer. Yes. And I want it recorded that my marriage today was entered under financial coercion connected to threats against my mother's home and my sister's education. I want independent review. I want my uncle removed from any authority connected to our trust. And I want every forged signature investigated. My voice did not shake. That was new. The investigator nodded. Martin sat down hard in a lobby chair, suddenly looking older than his suit. Silas watched me with something like respect, which felt more insulting than hatred. You think Kane will let you stay this free? He asked. I glanced back at Victor. He answered before I could, but only with the truth I had taught him to hold. She does not need me to let her. Victor's sentence landed in the bank lobby with the quiet force of a lock opening. She does not need me to let her. For one strange second, no one knew what to do with a ruthless man refusing to claim power he could have easily taken. Silas Ward looked at him as if he had spoken a language powerful men were not supposed to understand. Martin stared at me from the lobby chair, pale and smaller now, his careful uncle face gone, leaving only a man who had mistaken my love for a handle. The investigators began asking questions. Nora answered the procedural ones, calm as winter. I answered the personal ones because I was done letting anyone translate my fear into something convenient. Yes, I received the letter threatening my mother's house and my sister's tuition. Yes, I was told the debt belonged to Victor Kane. No, I was not informed of any word-linked transfer. No, I did not sign the consent forms in the vault. Yes, I want them investigated. Each answer felt like a stitch closing a wound I had not realized was open. My mother and Claire arrived 30 minutes later, escorted by Nora's assistant through the side entrance. Claire ran to me first, stopping just before she threw her arms around me, as if the day had taught her to ask before touching, even with love. I nodded, and she hugged me so tightly my wedding dress crackled. My mother stood behind her, eyes wet, one hand at her throat where the necklace had once rested. Emma, she whispered. I am sorry. Not because people were watching. Not because Nora had told her to say it. Because she had finally seen the shape of the cage and recognized her own fingerprints on the door. I reached for her hand. I know. Forgiveness did not arrive. Not then. But the truth did, and truth was at least honest about how long healing might take. Across the lobby, Silas spoke with his attorney on the phone, voice low, face controlled. Martin would not look at Claire. That hurt her, I could tell, but it also freed something in her. Sometimes the moment someone stops pretending to love you is the moment you stop begging for proof. Victor stepped away while my family spoke with the investigators. He stood near the tall front windows, looking out at Bryant Park, the city lights reflecting across his face. I walked over when I was ready. Not because he called me. He did not. You admitted in front of Silas that I do not need your permission, I said. His eyes stayed on the window. You do not. That could weaken you. Probably. And you said it anyway. He turned then. Your father told me to prove I know how to leave a door open. The ache in my chest was softer now, which made it more dangerous. You did not know my father. No. But I understand men who leave instructions because they do not trust the living to be brave enough. Outside, taxis slid past like yellow sparks. I looked down at my wedding ring, thin and cold on my finger. A legal circle. A 72-hour shield. A symbol with too many meanings and none I had chosen for love. I twisted it once, not removing it, just reminding myself it could move. Victor noticed. When this review is complete, I will have annulment papers prepared. I looked up. Already? You married me to survive a trap. You should not have to stay married to prove the trap was real. I wanted to say thank you, but gratitude felt too small and too dangerous, the kind of word that could grow roots in the wrong soil. What if I ask for the papers before the review ends? You will have them. What if I never want to see you again? His face went still, but not cold. Then I will make sure my legal team speaks only to Nora. What if I do? The question escaped before I could cage it. Victor did not answer quickly. That saved us both. Then I will ask where you want me to stand. The lobby noise faded around us, papers moving, voices recording, my family breathing on the other side of the room. I hated him less in that moment. Not loved. Not trusted fully. Less hated. It felt like a betrayal of the fear that had kept me alive all day. Nora called my name from the evidence table, and I stepped back. Victor let me. Of course he did. By midnight, emergency orders had frozen the Caldwell Trust, protected my mother's deed, and secured Claire's tuition. Martin was removed from temporary authority pending investigation. Silas left with his attorney, his calm intact but his plan bleeding documents. The wedding reception ended without a goodbye line, without cake, without the soft rituals people use to make a marriage look blessed. I returned to the hotel suite with my mother, Claire, and Nora. Victor did not come upstairs. Instead, when I opened the bridal room door, I found the phone he had given me resting on the table with one message on the screen. 71 hours remain. Every one of them is yours. Morning came without mercy. It poured pale light through the hotel curtains and turned the bridal suite into evidence. White orchids drooped in glass vases. Champagne sat untouched in silver buckets. My veil lay across the chair like a ghost that had given up trying to haunt me. I had slept for 90 minutes in my wedding dress because taking it off felt too much like admitting the day had happened inside my own skin. Claire woke on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. My mother sat near the window, holding a cup of coffee she had not tasted. Nora had gone downstairs before sunrise to meet with investigators and file emergency motions. The phone Victor gave me sat on the table, silent except for that one message. 71 hours remain. Every one of them is yours. I read it again while the city below began its regular life, horns, brakes, footsteps, people going to offices with coffee and no idea that last night a bride had walked through a bank lobby carrying proof of her own cage. At 7:23, Nora called. The trust freeze held through the night. Your mother's deed is protected. Claire's tuition reserve is secured under independent oversight. Martin is formally suspended from all Caldwell financial authority pending review. Claire covered her mouth and cried without sound. My mother closed her eyes. I stood very still because relief can hurt when your body has been braced too long. And Victor? I asked before I could stop myself. Nora paused for 1 second, just long enough to make me aware of the question. His team cooperated. He also filed a personal statement confirming that you entered the marriage under disputed financial pressure and that he will not oppose annulment if you request it. I looked at the ring on my finger. He put that in writing? Yes. Why? Nora's voice softened. Because written doors are harder to close quietly. After the call, I finally changed out of the dress. Claire helped with the buttons because my hands shook too much. No one spoke while the satin loosened. It fell around my feet in a whisper, not dramatic, not cinematic, just fabric becoming fabric again. I put on jeans, a cream sweater, and sneakers. My mother watched from the chair. "You look like yourself," she said. I wanted to say I was not sure who that was yet, but Claire smiled through tears, and I let the sentence stand. By noon, we went home to Brooklyn. Not Victor's house. Not the Kane estate the tabloids would later invent stories about. Home. The Caldwell brownstone was narrow, old, and full of tiny repairs my father had meant to finish before he died. The front steps were cracked at the corner. The brass mailbox stuck when Claire opened it. My mother touched the doorframe before stepping inside, as if asking the house for forgiveness too. Inside, everything smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. My father's coat still hung in the hall closet because none of us had been brave enough to remove it. I stood beneath it and let myself cry once. Not long. Not beautifully. Just enough to admit I had been scared. At 3 in the afternoon, a black car stopped across the street. Claire saw it from the kitchen window and stiffened. "Is that him?" I looked. Victor stood beside the car in a dark overcoat, one hand in his pocket, not approaching the steps. No guards crowded the sidewalk. No demand arrived with him. He simply stood across a Brooklyn street like a question waiting for permission to be asked. My mother looked at me. This time, she did not tell me what to do. I walked outside with my arms folded against the January wind. Victor did not cross until I nodded. Even then, he stopped at the bottom step. "Nora said the freeze held," he said. "She told me." Good. Silence moved between us, filled with traffic and distant sirens and a delivery truck idling half a block away. "Why are you here?" I asked. He held out a plain folder. "Temporary protection orders for your mother's house and Claire's tuition. Copies only. Nora has the originals." I took the folder. "You could have sent someone." "I could have. But you wanted to see whether I was still here." His eyes met mine. Honest. Uncomfortable. Yes. I should have hated that. A ruthless man admitting what should have sounded like danger. But he did not step closer. He did not ask to come inside. He did not look past me at the house like it might belong to him through marriage. "And?" I asked. Victor looked at the brownstone, then back at me. "You look like you are standing in your own doorway." My throat tightened. That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters. I held the folder against my chest. 70 hours remain. 69, he corrected gently. I counted while standing across the street. I almost smiled. Almost. Do not make that sound romantic. It is not. It is accountability. The wind lifted a strand of my hair across my cheek. He saw it and did nothing about it. Another small door left open. "Victor," I said, and his name felt less like a threat than it had yesterday. "When the papers are ready, I want them sent to Nora first." "They will be." "And if I ask you not to come back?" "I will not." "And if I ask you to?" His gaze held mine, steady and gray under the winter sky. "Then I will stop at the bottom step until you invite me higher." I looked back at the house where my mother and sister waited behind the curtain, not hiding, just watching a woman learn the shape of her own choice. Then I looked at the man I had married to survive. He had not become safe. Not yet. But he had become careful, and careful was the first language of remorse I had ever believed. "Send the papers," I said. "And send me the truth before anyone else can package it." Victor nodded once. "You will have both." Then he stepped back from my stares, crossed the street, and left without making me watch him go. That was when I understood the danger had changed. I was no longer afraid he would keep me. I was afraid that, given every chance to leave, I might one day choose to open the door. The papers arrived before sunset. Nora brought them herself in a brown leather folder, walking into our kitchen with snow on the shoulders of her coat and the expression of a woman who had seen too many families confuse silence with peace. My mother made tea no one asked for. Claire sat at the table with her laptop open to college assignments she had not been able to read. I stood by the sink, looking at the folder like it could breathe. Annulment petition, Nora said. Signed by Victor Kane. No contest. No claim to Caldwell assets. No confidentiality demand. No compensation clause. No private meeting required. Claire looked up. He signed all of that? He signed more than that. Nora slid a second document across the table. Statement of non-interference. He confirms in writing that all communication about the marriage, the trust, and any dissolution goes through me unless Emma requests otherwise. My mother touched the edge of the paper with trembling fingers. That sounds respectful. Nora gave her a look over her glasses. Respect should not sound exotic. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. I picked up the petition. Victor's signature sat at the bottom in dark ink, strong and controlled, giving away the only legal tie he had to me, as if power meant nothing if it had to be held over someone's head. You married me to survive a trap. You should not have to stay married to prove the trap was real. His words came back with the weight of a door swinging open. What happens if I sign? I asked. The petition moves forward. The marriage becomes part of the record as disputed and coerced. You regain legal distance immediately while the court reviews the rest. And if I do not? Nora's eyes softened. Then you stay married for now, but only legally. You still have every protection. Your trust is frozen. Your home is safe. Claire's tuition is safe. Your uncle remains suspended. Claire leaned back slowly. So for the first time in this whole nightmare, nobody loses if Emma chooses for herself. The kitchen went quiet. That was the sentence no one had dared to say. Nobody loses if Emma chooses. My mother began to cry again, but this time she did not ask me to comfort her first. She wiped her own face and said, "Whatever you decide, I will not make my fear your burden again." I wanted to believe her. I also knew healing was not a speech made over paperwork. It was practice. Daily. Awkward. Repeated until love stopped arriving with conditions in its hands. I took the folder upstairs to my bedroom, the small one facing the street. The window stuck when I opened it. Cold air rushed in, smelling like snow, exhaust, and Brooklyn brick. Across the street, there was no black car. No man waiting under a street lamp. No shadow pretending patience. Victor had sent the door and removed himself from the threshold. That should have made the decision easy. Instead, it made my chest ache in a place fear had never reached. I sat on the edge of my bed and read every page. Twice. Nora had taught me that women in my family needed to stop signing from emotion, whether that emotion was terror, guilt, or gratitude. So I read like a woman who belonged to herself. At 11:40 that night, my phone lit up. Not with Victor's name. With a secure message forwarded by Nora. A copy of his full statement. I opened it with careful fingers. Emma Caldwell did not seek my protection. She was forced into a false choice created by financial pressure against her family. Any protection my name provided was temporary and does not create moral, emotional, or legal obligation. She owes me nothing. The words blurred. She owes me nothing. Men had spent my life teaching me that every rescue came with a receipt. My uncle called sacrifice love. My mother called fear practicality. Even my own guilt had called survival selfish. But there, in black and white, the man everyone feared had written the sentence no one gentle had ever given me. She owes me nothing. I pressed the phone against my chest and let myself breathe. In the morning, I went in Nora's office in Midtown wearing jeans, boots, and my father's letter folded inside my coat pocket. Victor was not there. Good, I told myself. Then, when the elevator opened, I saw him standing in the hallway beside Nora's door, not blocking it, not approaching, just waiting with a folder in his hand. He looked tired. Human, which felt more dangerous than powerful. I did not come to persuade you, he said before I could speak. Nora asked for originals from my side. And you brought them yourself? Yes. Why? His gray eyes met mine. Because some truths should not arrive by courier. I should have walked past him. Instead, I looked at the folder, then at his hands, then at the space he had left open between us. I read your statement. Then you know you are free. I know you wrote that I owe you nothing. His voice lowered. You do not. I held the annulment petition in my bag unsigned. It felt heavier than the wedding dress ever had. That is the problem, Victor. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Why? I stepped around him toward Nora's office door, then stopped with my hand on the knob. Because when a man finally asks for nothing, a woman has to learn whether what she feels is fear leaving or something beginning. Nora's office was quiet enough to make every page sound important. I sat at the conference table with the annulment petition in front of me, my father's letter to the left, Victor's statement to the right, and my own reflection trembling faintly in the dark glass. 72 hours had not passed yet. Not fully. But something in me had. The woman who had entered that hotel suite in a wedding dress was not gone. I would never insult her by pretending she was weak. She had survived with the tools she had. Silence. Obedience. Smiles sharp enough to hide pain. But the woman sitting in Nora Bell's office had different tools now. A lawyer. A record. A voice. A door. Victor stood by the window with the morning light cutting across his black coat, not looking at the papers, not asking for mercy, not offering romance as a distraction from truth. That mattered. So I looked at the petition and uncapped the pen. His hand tightened once at his side. Only once. Then he let it relax. You do not have to explain, he said. I know. My voice was steadier than I felt. That is why I can. Nora sat across from me, silent, giving my choice the dignity of no audience except those who had earned the right to witness it. I signed my name on the petition. Emma Rose Caldwell. Not Kane. Not property. Not payment. My hand did not shake. Victor looked down for a moment, and I saw pain cross his face before discipline carried it away. He had promised to leave the door open. He had not promised it would not hurt to stand outside it. Nora collected the paper, stamped the receipt copy, and slid it into a folder. I will file this today, she said. The marriage will be legally unwound, and the trust case continues separately. Good, I said. And it was good. It was also not the ending people would have expected. They would have wanted me to run into Victor's arms because he had protected me, or hate him forever because he was dangerous. Real life was less tidy. Freedom had to come first, even when the heart stood behind it with questions in its hands. Victor stepped toward the door. I will coordinate through Nora. Victor. He stopped, but he did not turn too quickly. Even now careful. I stood and walked to him, leaving the signed papers on the table. You once told me to use the monster until I was safe. His eyes met mine. You did. No, I said. I survived. There is a difference. He absorbed that like correction, not insult. Yes. And now I am choosing something that is not survival. His breath changed. Barely. What are you choosing? I looked at the hallway behind him, open and ordinary, filled with the sound of phones ringing and printers humming and lives not arranged like sacrifices. Time. He did not speak. So I continued. No marriage. No debt. No gratitude pretending to be love. No private promises made because the story needs a pretty ending. His mouth softened, not into a smile, but into understanding. Then what? Coffee, I said. In public. Next week. With Nora knowing where I am. With my own ride home. With you sitting across from me as a man, not a husband, not a shield, not a cage. For the first time since I met him, Victor Kane looked truly unarmed. I would like that. I know. You do. You counted hours outside my house. A quiet laugh left him, low and surprised, and the sound made him seem less like a legend and more like someone learning how to live without being feared in every room. 1 month later, the Caldwell Trust was under independent court oversight. My mother was in counseling, Claire was back at school, and Martin Caldwell's name no longer appeared on any document that could touch our future. Silas Ward's empire did not collapse in a single dramatic night. Real power rarely does. It frayed through filings, testimony, frozen accounts, and people finally telling the truth in rooms where lies used to sit comfortably. As for Victor, he kept the rules. Coffee became dinner months later. Dinner became walks through cold Manhattan streets where he kept his hands in his coat pockets unless I reached first. He never called me his wife again. Never called me his. And maybe that was why, one evening in spring, when the city smelled like rain and blooming trees, I stopped beneath a street lamp and took his hand because I wanted to feel it, not because anyone was watching. He looked at our joined hands as if he had been given something too fragile to name. "Are you sure?" he asked. I smiled then, small but real. "No, but I am free." His fingers closed around mine gently, with no claim in the touch, only gratitude for the choice. I had married a ruthless man to survive a cage built by family. I had signed my way out before I let myself feel anything for him. That was the lesson my father left hidden in gold and paper. A door only matters if it opens both ways. Love, if it is real, does not stand in front of it. It waits beside it, hands empty, while you decide whether to walk through.